feeling, and you come in and do your investigation, and there's
Yeah,
nothing
the
there?
answer is yes. I mean, a lot of banks will call me in, sloppy bookkeeping or whatever, and teasingly, was there fraud? No, just stupidity. I mean, they're bad businessmen, and,
Right.
and they're making bad decisions. It had nothing to do with fraudulently intending to let the company go or mishandled funds or whatever, but there's always that speculation of what happened.
Right.
And so, as you indicate, I'm usually brought in at least to take a look at what's going on from, as they call it, a fresh eyes approach, type of deal, that I have no skin in the game here. I'm just looking at it, and
and this is my call as to where the money went, or why the money went there,
Right.
or why it doesn't balance like it ought to.
Right, and again, that's kind of the role I want to call as a forensic accounting. I don't always find fraud, and again, the key word there, fraud, as opposed to negligence, is basically the intent. They intended to defraud. Now, again, people, that's why you got erasers on pencils. People make mistakes. There's no question about it. And businesses have insurance for things that go wrong and stuff. But it's that key word, which is really intent. Did they intend? And then all bets are off.
Right. If they intended, now we see, well, did they benefit from this, this misappropriation or whatever? And oftentimes, I'm sure they did. If they intended it, now maybe they don't get the money directly, but it's to pay their bill, or it's to somehow make their life better. What's the most common thing? What's the most common way, or what do you see the types of fraud?
Well, obviously, in the financial statement fraud, it begins with cash.
Okay.
There are different ways of people attempting to
make the company money their money.
Yes, right. And basically, and then they feel they deserve this money because
They're
they work,
underpaid,
or whatever. There's
work a
always a
Saturday.
reason for it.
Right.
But cash is really the king. I mean, that's the way that people look at that. I mean, there is obviously receivables where it's more of a lapping situation where they collect money, they don't report it to the put it on the company's books. They'll fraudulently sign the signature. You got the inventory issue, and again, that could be, especially in today's world, where you think surprisingly, what's a person going to do with this inventory? Well, there's always Craigslist, there's always eBay, and I'm not saying that people don't look for it, but that world has kind of made it even more easy to take things off a shelf. You don't have to go down the street and secretly say, "Hey, look, I got this computer for you." You go right on Craigslist, or
and it's seemingly anonymous because it's up there, and unless the company happens to be somebody from the company happens to be looking, you could probably move a lot of product. Right. So product that might have been not that attractive before now has a life.
Right, and so that's
value.
That's really come around because it's made it easier for people, and again, this is kind of that snowball thing with the fraud situation that's happening in the world. It is becoming, and I don't want to say epidemic, but boy.
You're very busy.
I'm very busy, and again, with the group that I'm with, it comes from all different facets of, I want to say, that forensic accounting type of thing.
And are you more likely to see it? I know you represent all kinds of institutions, banks, like you mentioned, and other companies and auto suppliers and gas stations and anything that might be out there. Is it more likely, do you find, to hit a bigger company versus a smaller company, or, is there some trend in that?
I don't know if it's necessarily bigger or smaller. What happens to it is, my role here is both with that small company and a large company. The larger companies usually have issues in today's world now, is the financing. The banks bring me in, they're not paying. What's the matter with going on here? From the smaller entrepreneurial companies, it's more or less the individual saying, I know my sales are high, I'm just not
realizing the net profit that I ought.
What's happening here, or my costs are way out of hand, or whatever. And again, you have to close down that opportunity for people, and that's the toughest thing. It's the toughest part of the process. And again, a lot of these people, especially in the smaller companies, as I've had, where I found out the individual has committed the fraud, would say, you know, I trusted her with my life. I thought she was such a trusted employee, and you become comfortable with that.
And it's got to seem such a betrayal. And they don't want to believe, I imagine, that this close, you know, friend/employee could possibly steal from them.
Right. Well, I've had it where they become so close that this individual had committed, had written checks to herself, fraudulently signed the check. Actually, it was a law firm, and they said they were still figured that she could still manage things, put some controls on her, didn't do anything, and 4 months later I get the call and said, you know,
here we are again.
Yeah, she stole again. Well, what is she doing there? You
know?
know?
Yeah, what did you think?
Yeah,
you know, she was going to quit all of a sudden?
Right.
Oh, okay, you got me.
So, you know,
you get awful used to that.
It's part of being, you know, the smaller ones saying, I'll never do it again. Well,
probably best to let them move along and never do it again because they're not there.
Exactly. So
that's obviously a simple fix. Give us some examples, you know, if you want, specific cases that might ring true. I know you worked on one that everybody out there is familiar with.
Kwame. Yeah, the Kwame
Kwame
case,
Kilpatrick. Tell us about that and how you got involved in that case.
Again, with the
without admitting to any guilt, to any crimes. Yes.
No. Really, I was brought in to take a look, and that was the issue that came with, could Kwame, did he have at the end of the month $6,000
to make his restitution payments? Yeah.
And again,
no, he only had $6, as I recall.
Right. So the role here was to help the prosecutor define that $6,000, and really the answer was at the end of the month, did he have the money or didn't? And he appeared to have the money, and really that was all what we.
That's what the court wanted you to come in and say is, does he or doesn't?
Yeah. Now we kind of helped behind the scenes a little bit and
prep the lawyers.
Well, we just gave them from our point of view of what was happening here, and. Nothing more than just having a skill set, because that's
what you do. Yeah. And trial lawyers aren't going to be as skilled at what you do. You have to, you know, really make it for a layperson. For the the lawyer is a layperson here and has to translate it to a judge or jury. So you're really translating ultimately to that judge or jury.
Yeah, and again, we work in a sense behind the scenes and stuff, and the prosecutors did a terrific job, you know, and. But we were just there to help, you know, that type of deal.
If you're just tuning in, we're talking to David Hammel from Godfrey Hammel about fraud and forensic accounting and these kind of very interesting and intriguing matters that we see in movies and TV shows all the time. You know, sometimes people are caught, sometimes they're not.
Well, you see all different kinds of characters, that's for sure. I mean, you sit across the person that has stolen millions of dollars, or it's
very interesting to see the reactions, like we were talking about before. Sometimes they want to tell you, maybe it's coming clean, but sometimes, like you said, also, it's, well, I deserved that money because look how valuable I am, look how hard I work. The boss doesn't adequately compensate me, but I'm doing my own kind of compensation and making it right.
Yeah. As I said, most of the time, the people spend all the money. There was one time in particular, she actually had saved the money and had restitution to pay back the money that she had stolen.
That's unusual.
Very unusual. But the problem was she still went to jail because she was
still stole the money.
She was Al Capone. It doesn't matter what you did, you have to declare it on your tax return. See? So you can be in any kind of business. You could sell drugs or whatever, but the IRS says put it on the Schedule C, pay taxes, we don't care.
We'll prosecute you for that later. Well, somebody else will prosecute for that, but we'll take your tax money.
And that's how they got her, from the standpoint of, okay, you paid it back, big deal, but you never reported it on your tax return.
Yeah, you're still guilty of a crime.
Yeah, so she went to what I call charm school for 13 months.
Or college. Yeah, I've known a number of people that go away for that self-improvement.
So